Hello. So I'm back home, unpacked and comfortable. I had a cold time in Minnesota. I think the high was maybe 26 or 29 or something like that. And living in Dallas, Texas for the last 13 years, I'm not used to that weather anymore. So it was a little bit of a shock, but I made it through. Anyway, so today I just wanted to go over something that people have a tendency to overlook or miss or just not do, and that is an emergency fund. My purpose here in this channel is to grow a brand new channel. So I just opened it. January 1st was my first video that was released. So it's brand new and I'm trying to grow it as big as it can be. With the bottom line or the goal of helping people, talking about YouTube, and getting monetized. Those are the three things that I'm going for. Because my interest is in finance, that's mostly what I'll talk about. So I've been watching Dante London, and he kind of made a video, I don't know, a couple days ago maybe, that kind of hurt a little bit because he is going to change what he's talking about because it sounds like because of the comments that people leave down in the comment section below. And you know, people are rude and mean, and it is what it is. You can't get over that. But people were saying that they don't want to watch any more YouTube videos or videos about YouTube when he's not a YouTube teacher. He's a vlogger and, you know, all that stuff. But if you need to change focus in order to pay for your life, I think that's okay. Because I think that's what his purpose in YouTube is to have an income in order to help his family. So I don't know. I feel some kind of way about him kind of changing course. I feel sad, basically. I feel sad. I am changing course only a little bit because, again, my goal is going to be finance. It always will be finance on this channel. I do still want you to get on YouTube, though. So if you're thinking of opening a YouTube channel, a brand new channel, or even reviving an old channel, there's a couple things you need to do. First is post every day. Post 20-minute videos every day. Talk about YouTube and how you can help people get on YouTube or thrive on YouTube, or, you know, keep going on YouTube, basically, even if it's just inspirational. And also use certain hashtags down in the description box of your videos. So the hashtags are YouTube, subscribe, life, and respect. So those 4 hashtags down in your description box. So people, when they search those 4 hashtags or any of those, your video will pull up. Now there could be 50,000 videos ahead of yours that pull up as well, but yours will be in that mix when people search those hashtags. So do those 4 things. That'll help you get on YouTube, stay on YouTube, eventually get monetized on YouTube. Again, that's my goal here, is to get monetized and see how many subscribers I can get, how quickly. I have set this up as a 30-day challenge in order to kind of copy what Joanna did, because she's mentioned doing a 30-day challenge just to see where she could go, see where she could get. That's what I'm doing as well. So that's what I'm trying to do. Get to 20-minute videos. That's difficult for me because I'm not a talker. I don't just sit around talking. And to talk about YouTube. I do want to talk about finance, though, so that's I'm going to kind of lean on the finance side and help people, because that helps me as well as anyone that is listening that is helped. And then, again, use the 4 hashtags down below. So I'm going to do those 4 things. Now today, I actually wrote down a few things that I stay focused. And one of them, or the main purpose for today's little chat, is going to be about saving and having an emergency fund. So a lot of people know that they should have an emergency fund. I mean, most people know that. If you're an adult and you live on your own or with a spouse or partner or whatever, you know that an emergency fund is necessary. But a lot of people don't have it. A lot of people use their credit card as an emergency fund, which is not an emergency fund because then you just have to pay that back. So the idea of an emergency fund is to have actual cash waiting that's somewhat easily accessible so that you can go grab it when you need it in an emergency only. This isn't for my birthday when I emergencyly have to go down to San Marcos, Texas to the Gucci outlet and buy another Gucci purse. That's not an emergency. That doesn't count. That doesn't count as an emergency. Emergency is not, oh, geez, I forgot to save grocery money. I got to go get groceries. That's not emergency fund money. That's not what that's for. Emergency fund money is set aside for actual emergencies. For example, someone runs into the side of your house and you need to repair the side of your house because they cracked some bricks or something. That would be an emergency. That would be a really expensive emergency, but that would be an emergency. Or if you're mowing your lawn and a rock kicks up and you break your window, that could be considered an emergency. It's a cheap emergency, probably $100, a couple $100, but that could be considered an emergency. Or you, like I did, you run over a huge pothole on 35 in Dallas, Texas, and you flatten your tire and you need to replace your expensive tires. That would be considered an emergency. Now that could go if you kept money in a car line, if you had a car expense line, it could go there as well. I did mine as an emergency because I don't keep a car fund other than like oil changes and that type of thing. I think I've told this story before, but my car gets serviced just once a year, and so that's what I save monthly. I save enough to make up for that money that's going to be used for that once a year service. So I don't keep money set aside for car payments or anything like that because I don't have any of that. So anyway, so that's kind of what you want to use an emergency fund for. You don't want to use it for something that is normally on your budget. So on your budget, you should have everything because it should be a zero-based budget. So every dollar on your paycheck or on your income should have a place to go, or you should know where it's going to go. So you should have a line for groceries and lights and heat and water and mortgage or rent, and if you have car payments, if you have insurance, if you have medical stuff like prescriptions. I have lots of prescriptions I have to get every month. Like those type of things are on your budget every month, and it's pretty much the same every month. Obviously your lights and heat, that kind of stuff will change a little bit, but for the most part everything else would stay the same, and it's going to go month to month, and you're going to budget it month to month. Or I budget whenever I get paid. I adjust my budget to match what I made that session or that bi-weekly session. So in your budget, you can put an emergency fund line. So whether you're in debt or not in debt, you need an emergency fund. So the key is, how much should your emergency fund be? Well, I follow Dave Ramsey's advice because it's what helped me, and it's what helped my late husband and I get out of debt and stay out of debt. So that's what I follow. So he goes by the theory that you should set aside $1,000 until you're out of debt. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, $1,000 isn't going to help me if I'm in an emergency. The idea isn't for it to be like a cushion so that you feel it's okay to use. The idea of the emergency fund when you're in debt is to hurry up, fix the issue, and get right back into saving again so that you can replace that emergency fund. It's not, to replace a car or something like that. It's for simple, quick emergencies. We want to get you out of debt. We don't want you to live in debt trying to save up for an emergency fund. So $1,000 is what is recommended to start as an emergency fund. I've heard a lot of people moving that number up to $2,000. So if you're comfortable, or if you spend much more money than that, then I would say go ahead and go for the $2,000 as your beginner, your starter emergency fund. This is, again, just to get you out of an emergency while you're getting out of debt. Now, if it's going to take you 5-10 years to get out of debt, that's a whole different problem. And so you probably will need a little bit more of an emergency fund in that instance. The idea is that you want to try to get out of debt as quickly as possible, And so if you can get out of debt within, he says 18 to, I think it's 32 months, 36 months maybe. Year and a half to 3 years is what most people spend who are intense on getting out of debt. That's the time that most people spend getting out of debt and then building their lives after debt. Once you have saved up that emergency fund, that mini or that starter emergency fund, your next task immediately after saving that money is to then pay down your debt. So however much debt you have will determine, obviously, how long it takes to get out of debt. But the idea of the budget that you're going to do, because you have to budget in order to know where all your money is going and where it's going and how it's going and how it's going to get there. The idea of doing the budget is that you'll know how quickly you're going to be out of debt. You'll know if it's going to take you a year, 2 years, 5 years. You'll know because you'll pretty much have your life budgeted out and figured out. And you'll know how much you can spend on entertainment or fun stuff, because you should leave that as a budget line item, because you need that. You need to enjoy yourself. You can't just be strict and, suffer all the time. So you do need a fun line or a miscellaneous line. But the idea is not to be going out partying every weekend, or going, golfing with the boys or whatever it is. You don't want to do that every week. Because the idea is that you're living on scorched earth. Your rice and beans and rice is all you're eating. It's very serious, and you're using every dime you make as much as possible. Every extra dime you make should go toward that debt and getting out of that debt. If you live your life in debt all of the time, you will never get ahead. It will never happen. You will never be able to save the money that you need to save for retirement. You'll never be able to enjoy the money that you make, that you go to work every day for. You'll never enjoy any of that if you're in debt. Because if you are enjoying any of the fun stuff in life, you're using more debt to do it, because all the money that you make is going onto your credit cards or whatever other nonsense that you have built up in debt. And obviously, it's easier for some people than others. It seems as if you make more money, it is easier to get out of and stay out of debt. However, as I've mentioned before, if you make $20,000 a year and you spend $10,000 a year on everything in your life, all your expenses are only $10,000 a year, that's $10,000 of income that you have that you can do something with. You could put it aside for retirement, hopefully, or you could have some entertainment fun in there as well, or you could save it for a couple years and buy a car. Now, that's $20,000. So if you made just $20,000 a year and you only spent $10,000 of it, you would have $10,000 left over. Let's say you make $200,000 a year. However, you spend $220,000 a year. That means you're in the negative $20,000 every single year, no matter what, because you're spending more than you make. And so no matter how much you make, no matter if you make $1 a year or if you make $1 million a year, if you spend more than you make, you're causing yourself trouble. And it doesn't matter, no matter what numbers you want to use. If you spend more than you make, you're causing trouble. That's why for me, the amount of money doesn't, and I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, because of course it matters. I can't live on, $3,000 a year. I can't, that's not possible. But it doesn't, I'm not out here trying to make $1 million a year. If it were to happen, that'd be fabulous. But that's not a goal of mine, because I don't have debt. And so I'm not struggling to pay for anything. I am free to purchase most of the things that I want and live somewhat in the way that I want. I am still a little bit strict with myself. I do still budget. Every time I get paid, I put it in my budget and move, money around and figure out what's best and figure out how I'm going to be able to save the most and spend the most. I am a little bit of a shopper, but I have turned into an Amazon shopper. And so I like Amazon, and now because I went to the Gucci outlet for my birthday, now I'm on the Gucci email spamming, basically, is what it is. And so now I'm kind of hooked on that again too. So, but the idea of all of this is, it doesn't matter specifically how much money you make. What matters the most is that you spend less than you make. if you make $20,000 and you only spend 10, you're $10,000, actually $30,000 ahead of the person who makes $220,000 or $200,000 and spends $220,000. Does that make sense? So even though you only make $20,000, if you only spend $10,000, you have $10,000 left over. If you make $200,000 but you spend $220,000, you're in the hole already $20,000, and you have nothing left over. You have no income yet because you're basically at zero. So the person that's making $20,000 is actually making more than the person that's making $200,000. It's a backwards way of thinking about it, but think about it logically. If you're spending more than you make, you're in debt and you're not making any money, basically. So people are always chasing a certain number. Oh, I want to make $100,000 a year. I want to make $500,000 a year. I want to make, $650,000 a year, whatever it is. And that's fine. You should have goals. However, if you spend more than you make, that goal, whatever goal you put in your head, will never make a change. It'll never make a change because you're going to be in debt and you're going to stay in debt. So the idea is to stay out of debt. I'm sorry, I went off on that whole rant. Let's off my purpose. Purpose is emergency fund today. That's what we're talking about. So the starter emergency fund is going to be, I'm sorry, my friend keeps sending TikToks. It keeps popping up on my screen because I record on my phone. So I keep looking at it and it's, I'm trying to read what's at. Anyway, so the emergency fund. So the idea number one, or the first idea, is to save up your starter emergency fund somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000. When I was getting out of debt, I used $1,000. That was enough for me. It worked for me. It was fine. Use up to $2,000. Save up to $2,000 if it makes you feel better. So do that first. After you've done that, you got to get yourself out of debt. Start with the smallest debt first. Pay that off. Whatever money you get once you've paid off that smallest debt, whatever money you would have put on that payment, you're going to move that money onto the next lowest bill that you're paying, the next lowest debt. So if the first debt was $1,000 and you paid that off, but your payments were $100 a month, that $100 a month that you would have been spending is now going to go to the second bill, which is $2,000 a month, or $2,000, which means it's $150 a month. So that $100 that you originally were spending on that first bill is going to move over onto the second bill. So now you're paying your second bill with your regular payment that you would have paid, but now you've added the money from the first bill. So you're creating this snowball effect where you're paying more and more toward each bill. You have to stay focused though. People will say, oh, well, work on the highest interest rate. Get rid of the highest interest rate. None of that matters. None of that matters because you need the momentum of getting rid of these bills. If you have 10 bills and you only focus on the one that has the highest interest, and that one also happens to be the one with the highest balance, it's going to seem like you're never going to get out of debt because that one may take you a year or 2 years to get out of debt. Whereas the little ones could take you a couple months, a month, 3 months, 6 months, and you'll be done with those. Then you apply that money to the bigger debt. And it just move up gradually. Go from the smallest to the largest debt. Start with the smallest, pay it off, take the money that you would have been paying on that smallest debt, move to the next bill, which is the second smallest, put that money onto the second smallest along with your original payment that you would have done. So now you're almost doubling that payment. When that one's paid off, do the same thing. Move to the third bill and so on and so forth. So you're just smallest to largest. Pay it off. Once you have paid off all your debt, I promise it can happen. I promise it can happen. Then we're going to work on your real emergency fund or your long-term emergency fund. Now, people want to act like there's no way that you can live without credit cards and that you can live without a car payment. I promise you 100% it can be done. And it can be done by normal middle-class people. You don't have to be rich to do this. You don't have to be a trust fund baby to do this. You can do this with normal, regular income. Now, if you are low income or kind of at a poverty level, your debt probably, hopefully, isn't too much. But you have to work on whatever level you're on. It doesn't matter. And again, if you're making $1 million and you're so deep in debt you can't breathe, it's the same thing. No matter the amount, it's the same process. Smallest to largest. Don't worry about interest at this point. smallest to largest, and just start knocking those bills out. And eventually you'll end up debt free. Now you are going to leave, if you own a home and you are paying a mortgage, leave your mortgage until the very end, after you've saved your long-term emergency fund. So once you've paid off your regular consumer debt is what we're considering it. So credit cards, car payment, student loans, what else do you pay for? Vet bills that you put on a card, which is actually a credit card. So care credit is what it's called, care credit. All those type of bills, get those done. Get those out of there. We don't need that. Because all that money that you now will have, instead of paying those credit card payments, now you have that in your hand and you can use it to buy what you need to buy. And so once you're done paying off all your debt, we're going to work on your emergency fund. Your real long-term emergency fund is going to be 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. Not just of your household, like your rent and your water and electric, not just that, but your actual household expenses. So your home, whatever it is, rent or mortgage, your food, your water, your electric, your gas, what else do you need for a home? I don't know, whatever your regular monthly budgets are. Now, at this point, you should still be saving at this point. You still need to be living on beans and rice and beans. You shouldn't be going out to dinner every night. You shouldn't be eating at McDonald's every morning. You shouldn't be picking up Starbucks at every break that you have at work. Those are things we need to cut out, because all of that wasted money is money you could have been putting on your debt. But we've already gone by that. So when you're out of debt, and you're saving for your long-term emergency fund, you want it to be for 3 to 6 months of your expenses. These are your actual expenses, not your, oh, I think it's about $3,000 a month, or, oh, I think I spend about $5,000 a month. None of that. It's got to be budgeted so that you know how much you actually spend. And you need those numbers in order to safeguard yourself if something actually does happen. So again, 3 to 6 months of expenses we want saved. And in this instance, when you've got your long-term savings, you want to put that in something that's somewhat liquid so you can get to it. You have access to it without too much trouble. But you don't want it to be so easy to get to that you just kind of dip in there whenever you want something, like, ooh, I really like those boots. Ooh, I like those red bottoms. I've never owned a pair of red bottoms, just so you know. I really like those shoes, or I really like that $1,800 Christmas tree. Why are you spending $1,800 on a Christmas tree, ma'am? I don't know. Anyway, so it should be liquid so that you can get to it, but not so liquid like a regular checking account. So a money market account is a good way to save your emergency fund, because the money market account is liquid enough that you can pull that money out. Okay, so we want to be able to pull that money out in an emergency. You should use it only for emergencies. Again, not for the last minute Christmas tree, or the red bottom shoes, or the purse for your birthday, or Christmas presents. Christmas happens every year. You should be saving for it. It's not an emergency, or anything like that. Your budget, again, will determine how much your emergency fund needs to be. Okay? All right, so here's the thing we need to do. Start off with your mini emergency fund, or your starter emergency fund. It's $1,000, $1,000 to $2,000 saved. After you've got that saved, work on your debt. Get rid of your debt. Smallest to largest, pay off your debt. And once you've paid off your debt, then we're going to save the actual emergency fund. This is the real emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of expenses. If you have a job that's not the same every week or every month, you're not paid the same every week or every month, you're not salary, maybe you're a salesperson, or maybe you have fluctuating hours, you may want to save more than 6 months. I have some people have up to a year of savings. So that's up to you, but you need to figure that out on what's best for you and your lifestyle. Okay. What else do I have? What if you use your emergency fund? So if you use your emergency fund, you now have to replace your emergency fund. So now we're going to go back to step 1 of scorched earth and start replacing your emergency fund. You got to be gazelle intense. You got to go after that. Like it's biting you. Okay. You need to go after it and get that emergency fund replaced. Okay, I think that's it. Is that it? I think that's it. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch me. The goal in starting a new YouTube channel is, we've got a couple things. I'm going to say it quick. Post every day. Post 20-minute videos every single day. Help people. Talk about YouTube. And use the hashtags down below. Subscribe, YouTube, life, and respect. Use those 4 hashtags down in the description box below. And of course, save your emergency fund, people. How do you expect to get out of an emergency without an emergency fund? Just do it. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Y'all have a great one.